Everything you say now is being recorded.
We're good? Let me just make sure.
We are live.
Okay, I put a story on the Get Out Street Instagram. Brian already put a story on his Instagram. Do you tell your people, Brian? Did you like put something on Facebook or?
I told some people, I didn't do Facebook. Let me do Facebook.
Yeah, do Facebook, man.
Just did Facebook. Hello.
Yeah, we're live. Put something on Facebook.
Okay, good.
We're live.
You have to verify that.
Cool. Yeah, do Facebook. Someone's playing the video. Oh, is that me?
Yeah, that's
Jesus.
That's someone. Maybe
that was
you.
Annoying.
Okay. Good. At least you confirmed that we're live, so that's good.
Yeah, we are. Cool, fellas.
All right, hold on. Let me check. All right. So, Paul, you want me to do it?
Yeah, you should do it. This is our third one, because the first one wasn't so good with the technical difficulties.
Yes.
And this is our first one with Brian. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're all in Toronto, and Selorm is in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Oh man,
we need to.
You
know where that is, Brian? Do you know where that is?
I do. That's where my grandfather was from. Harrisburg.
Really?
Been through there quite a few times, actually. Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
and then
good.
that, even though I'm from Buffalo originally, so I'm a Bills fan, but Steelers have always been near and dear to my heart. I don't know if you're a Steelers fan, but
Eagles.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Well, thanks so much for jumping on, and I'll give the floor to Selorm. We'll kick off the topic of the show, I guess.
Yes, I don't know why I came up with 5 things. It's a live, so it's just things I knew.
Standard, but it's standard. Whenever you want to do a video, it's always
right. Exactly.
It's not 3.
Right.
That's what it is.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about things we wish we knew when we started, there's a lot that we thought would have improved our photography, but hindsight, you realize that you really don't need to go that route. So we're all going to share our experiences today, and we're ready to get rolling. So who wants to start?
Yeah, I would ask, like, do you guys remember your first camera that you bought?
Oh yeah,
you guys.
I still have it.
You still have your first camera?
A Nikon D5200. I still have it.
I sold mine. It was a Canon T5.
Canon T5.
When I first started, yep, the T5. I sold it about a year ago.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? I still have my camera.
Do? The first one that you is it? Because it's not the Sony, is it?
Yeah, because really, guys, I only started shooting about not even 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And so
crazy.
So yeah, here's my A6000, which is 95% of my Instagram is shot with this little guy here.
Awesome. Yeah. I have one of those still.
Man.
That was that's probably the second camera I bought when I moved to Sony. I bought it used for like 300 and I still use it to this day. It's really good.
Yeah, it's convenient. It shoots quick, and it's funny, Rook. The reason I bought the camera was I had an opportunity to go overseas. And I figured just as a like a traveler or whatever, I just take some photos. And I was in Best Buy, and this thing called mirrorless camera came out. Right, never heard of it before. I was like, "What is a mirrorless camera?" So I asked the guy from Best Buy, and he did the best he could to explain it to me. And I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna do it." And then that was
I want
it.
a mirrorless camera. That's cool. Yeah.
My
first camera was a Nikon D5200. I liked it because it had this flip out feature, I'm like, I could flip it out and do whatnot. So, yeah.
I had a Canon PowerShot 9000 or something.
Wow.
Like a silver,
I think I had one of those.
Like a silver, like can fit into your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
That's what started it, right? It's crazy. It's funny how it starts, right? Like I didn't start until really like 5 years ago too. So I'm like with Brian, like I wasn't born with a camera in my hand.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's funny how it starts. But I even like just going on the topic of you know, things that you wish you knew? Like if someone were to start in photography today in quarantine and they bought a camera, what would you tell them? Like, how would you, like you're home, how are you going to learn? How are you going to shoot? Right. That's the way that I thought about it.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you, okay, so you bought a camera or you want to buy a camera, but you can't go anywhere.
Okay.
So how will you learn, right?
Yes. How would you learn? I think the most important thing they can learn without actually having to practice on people is understanding light, because no matter how good your camera is, if you don't understand light and you just go a clicking, it will be really hard to get good pictures in any situation. You might get lucky, but you cannot be consistent. Mm-hmm. So once you understand light, the next thing you need to understand is you need to understand your camera inside and out. And when I say inside and out, it's like you can close your eyes and change the shutter speed, change the ISO, change, the aperture, and you should be able to do those things very easily. And most importantly, understand how each of those three things affect the picture. Yeah. So, what happens when I change my ISO, what happens when I change my shutter speed, what happens when I change my aperture, and when do I need to change this? When do I need to change that? And what limit should I? So, all right, I'm gonna let someone else continue. So I don't see.
But you see, the problem is that you can't. Right. Like when you're in a camera store, it's hard to know because you can't test it, right? Like for me personally, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go buy a fancy camera, I'm gonna be a great photographer. It's like, well, it's gonna take a while, because you're always on Instagram, you're seeing all the photos and you're always comparing yourself, but it's going to take a while and you're going to have to practice a lot and you're going to have a lot of discipline. So for me, probably one thing I wish I knew is like, you got to be really patient, and you really just got to put in the work, because I think it's so easy to like look at photos and say, oh, this is great. I'm going out taking a great photo, and most of the time, they're okay, but they're not great. It's not the photo that you thought you were going to take. And the photo that you wanted to take comes with practice.
That reminds me of, like, I think you guys touched on it last week, briefly, but some people will ask me in my DMs or whatever, be like, hey, what kind of camera are you using to get that shot? Yeah. And I almost want to say it could have been my iPhone, man. It doesn't matter what, at the end of the day, yeah, we all have our preferences, right, between cameras, but the cameras are so good now. It's not about the shot. Again, like you had just said, it's about knowing your settings. It's about knowing the light. And sometimes it's about, that mood, that feeling, like looking around, sometimes I walk down the same street that I've been down 20 times, but then I look up, or I look to the left, I look to the right, and I see something I never saw before. And I was like, whoa, there it is. Right. And so,
training your eyes.
It's not so much about the camera. And so many people get hung up on, like, like you said, what I wish I knew from my first, before I bought my first camera. I mean, I wish I knew how much lenses cost. That's what I really wish I knew.
Yeah. I just wish that when I first started, I knew how much, I wish I knew what the differences were between cameras, right? Because everybody thinks a camera is a camera, right? Until I got serious into cameras, I didn't know there was a different sensor size, right? So it was an eye-opener for me at the beginning. I didn't know the different sensor sizes and how they affect your creativity and you know what I mean, like what you can get based on the different sensor size. So there's the micro four thirds, there's also the APS-C, and then there's the full frame. But at that point, I thought a camera is a camera, so let me just get a camera, right? But if you know what these sensor sizes are and what they can do and what the capabilities of each of the sizes are, and then bear into mind that based on whatever sensor size you choose, your purchase of lenses can also get impacted, right? So if I go out and I buy an APS-C camera and I go out and spend money on a bunch of APS-C lenses, as I was growing, I realized maybe I need to go to a full frame. Then what happens? You've invested so much in APS-C lenses without really knowing where you were going, right? So for me, I wish right at the gate, I knew a lot more about the sensor sizes and its impact on the choice of lenses when I'm investing, when I first started investing, so that I could have just bypassed the APS-C lenses altogether and probably invested more in full frame lenses, even if I was using an APS-C body, so that would have future-proofed some of my purchases, right? Because when I decided to go full frame,
but you're a professional photographer, right? So I mean, but
yeah,
for an amateur user, somebody that just wants to post on Instagram or things like that, then maybe that's not something they need, right?
Right. That's not something they need, but that's the point, right? My whole thing is, let's say at the beginning, I started off as an amateur. I wasn't planning to go and start doing weddings and stuff, right? So I just started off with, like I said, the T5 with a kit lens. Then I invested, as I got more interested in photography and I was growing, I invested in a couple of other lenses. But like I say, at that time when I got interested in, I had the T5. So, I didn't really look into the details of sensor size and lens purchases. So I just bought a couple of APS-C lenses just to keep up my T5 because they were cheap. You know what I mean? Like they were budget lenses. But down the line, as I moved away from Canon, I came to Sony. I began to get some research into sensor sizes and stuff. That's when I said, well, I'm not going to buy any more APS-C lenses. Even though I'm using an APS-C camera, I'm going to invest more in full frame lenses for down the line.
Yeah.
It's huge to know what you want to shoot. But it's tough, right? When you're starting out, it's tough to figure it out.
Right.
Difficult.
And one other thing I wish I knew was the difference in lenses. So just like Ivan said, I had shot for over a year. Of course, I was not shooting professionally before I realized that, okay, now we have prime lenses and we have zoom lenses, right? So I pretty much just, got, how do I put it? I just got the ball rolling. I was learning as I was going along.
Yeah.
And of course, when I found out that, prime lenses are way more expensive and we have these cheaper kit zoom lenses, which were cheaper, I gravitated towards the cheaper ones because who would want to spend $2,000 on a lens that doesn't zoom in?
Why would you want it? Yeah.
And then I have to be walking, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But with time, I learned that there's only so much you can do with the kit lenses, and if you wanted to be, I wouldn't say if you want to be professional, but if you wanted to have all the tools to do all the stuff you want to do, you might need to invest in some prime lenses. So for example, let's say if you are, let's say, an off-camera flash pro and you don't do high-speed sync, you shoot very very high apertures and you go for these wide environmental shots, you might not need a prime lens which is fast, which is f1.8. You might not need something like that, and you could still create beautiful work. And if that's your niche, that's fine. But having the prime and having the zoom, just gives you more room. Like you could do more low light stuff. You could do whatever comes your way. You can tackle any situation. So I wish I knew that. It took a while before I started investing in prime lenses. And now I pretty much only shoot prime.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I prefer too. I prefer to move my body versus move my
use
my
my
wrist. But I feel like and it's funny. And I explain if I'm shooting with a model, sometimes I explain like I've had them say, "Why don't you just zoom in?" I said, "No, my zoom is with my feet. I zoom with my feet."
Yep.
But yeah, but if somebody, Paul, you mentioned like if they're getting their first camera, the thing is, I did the same thing, right? It's like, I think as a beginner, if you're on a budget and you're not sure what you want to shoot yet, you're not sure, am I going to be a landscape photographer? Am I going to take pictures of my kids? Do I want to shoot weddings? What I recommend to people is you get that range, right? You get a maybe 18 to 55, and then you get yourself a 70 to 200. So that way you have a range, right? So you can take those close-up shots, but you have a zoom. And then when you figure out your sweet spot, like I think a good piece of it, it's not my advice, I'm stealing it from somebody, but what somebody told me was go back and say Lightroom, for example, look at all your favorite photos, hit the, I don't remember, is it the I key, but you bring up the information.
Yeah.
And show where was I? 85 millimeter, 90 millimeter, 85 millimeter, 79 millimeter. Maybe my style where I like to shoot is right around this, right? Maybe that's what I want to invest in, is maybe like an 85 prime or a 50 prime or something like that. Because, you know, I mean, obviously that could be a whole nother story, but what I would recommend to people is, even if you're shooting with that kit lens, go back and see, like, you know, what am I shooting with, or what you know, what focal length am I shooting at, and then make a decision from that.
Yeah. 100%.
Because it's easy to jump on YouTube and say, well, what's Peter McKinnon shooting with, or what's so-and-so shooting with,
that's
right?
What I'm saying.
And then you're like, that's the lens I want. But
you're getting into the comparison game, though. That's risky waters.
And it doesn't mean you're gonna be happy, you know.
No.
Yeah, like the advice I give most people these days, when anybody that asks me for they're getting started, they want to see, what I always tell people now is, get the kit lens. That's fine. Start off with a kit lens. But I also tell them, once you begin to grow, maybe your first lens should be like a nifty-50. It's not too expensive. It doesn't cost a lot, but it will take your photography a little bit more further than the kit lens will do, right? Because you get that 1.8, and you also get that little bit of a shallower depth of field with that 1.8. But at the same time, you're not investing so much right out of the gate. Right. But the kit lens, I don't have anything against kit lens. They're good. But if you want to go far, you'll get to a point where you realize quickly that kit lens
you're gonna outgrow it.
It's not for me.
You're gonna outgrow it. It's just natural.
Yeah.
And outgrowing a lens is a good thing, because that means you've used it. That means you practice a lot. And then you discover that, okay, now I need, you know, the debate between need and want. It's like, now you need to go somewhere else. It's not even a question of wanting. You actually need to buy like another lens.
Yeah.
A good thing, actually. Right.
Just remember, though, that the photographer makes the gear. The gear doesn't make the photographer.
Always.
Yep.
Always.
Yeah.
You know, I go to the meetups, or I see people, right, and they got the A9 or whatever, you know, and I'm just like, oh man, if I had that,
if I had that,
you know what I mean? But guess what? My pictures are still gonna look the same, because my style is my style, you know. But obviously equipment has come so far, and there's so much good glass out there, but I need like a second or third job so I can buy more of it, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
piggybacking off of what Brian said earlier, in Lightroom, you can actually go and filter all your pictures by focal length. Yeah. So it would tell you the percentage of your pictures that you've taken with a 35, 85, or whatever, and then you would know which is your favorite. And you know,
right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a good point. Like, it's a practice thing, right? Like, Selorm, is there like a camera shop in Harrisburg that you can go to ask questions? Like, if someone's just starting out, like, besides YouTube, is there a place where someone can go in Harrisburg to ask questions?
There was one close to Harrisburg. I'll say 20 minutes from Harrisburg. That one closed. Then the closest one is in Lancaster. And they actually rent lenses and stuff. I had a problem once on my one of my wide zooms. It stopped zooming. It was an 11 to 20 to Kina lens, and then the zoom kind of like got stuck at 20, right? So I took it there. I'm like, dude, I don't know what to do. He tried everything, and then he looked at it, and then he looked at my face and said, hey, it's now a prime. It's now a prime 20.
It's a 20 prime now.
Now it's a prime 20. Congratulations.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. He said, congratulations, it's a prime.
Yeah.
So apparently it was too old of a lens for him to take apart, because they couldn't do it. But I realized that they were very knowledgeable in what they did, and so that's a good idea. You could go ask questions and stuff like that.
Like, where are you gonna go? Right? If you don't have friends that are into photography, besides YouTube, like, where are you actually gonna go and talk to someone to ask a question?
Yeah. I think that also affected my growth when I started, because I started in a small town, Sealands Grove. I mean, of course, no camera shops there. I was not part of any photography group whatsoever. You know, I was pretty much just doing my own thing there, and that, I think, staggered my growth for a while.
Yeah, I think it's important to surround yourself with like like-minded people. Like I keep saying, like Toronto's very like saturated city for meetups. Like any other city doesn't have the level of meetups that we do for some reason. So, you know, it's, you can find like a million photography meetups in Toronto easily. But
yeah, when I first started, I used to use Henry's a lot.
Yeah,
When I go to
exactly.
Henry's in Brampton, everybody there knows me. As soon as I walk in there, they all know me.
Yeah.
I used to go out there and ask a lot of questions, right? So if I want to buy something,
Yeah.
I go there maybe 4 or 5 times before I actually make the purchase.
Yeah,
I
smart.
go in there, I talk to them, get my hands on it, try it out. I leave it, go back, come back in another day, do the same thing. He got to the point where I was becoming very annoying to them.
Yeah.
But after a long while, we
You're the
became
customer,
good
doesn't
friends.
matter.
So I became a preferred customer out there, right?
Yeah.
So it's about, like I said, if you don't have that support group, it's hard to learn. If you don't have people to bounce off ideas off and get sometimes criticism on, right? But that's what we have right now. We have Facebook groups, we have a lot of Instagram accounts, and people that who will answer you some of these questions, even if you can get close to them, right? Like I always say, I was fortunate to have someone take me under his wings from the beginning. But not everybody has that. But if you don't, look out some of the Facebook groups specific to photography and videography, and ask questions in those groups. You'll get a whole bunch of people who will be willing to come out and help you out. It may not be the same as having somebody in front of you, but you still get some knowledge out of those groups.
Yeah, I think it's so important, especially when
Yeah.
starting out. So important.
Yeah, it's like back in the day, Facebook groups and stuff was not a thing. So I was talking to this old time photographer, and he was telling me that, look, back in the day, if you liked somebody's flash work and you wanted to know, you had to pay $5,000 to go to a workshop somewhere and sit through the whole. Today, you just ask them on the computer, hey, what lens did you use? What light did you use? What modifier did you use? They tell you everything for free. So he was like, we are really lucky, and we should make the best of that.
I still think there's a lot of benefit in the workshops too. I mean, there's some photographers. I've actually purchased during quarantine. I've never purchased a course in my life, but I'm sitting here in quarantine, and I ended up purchasing a couple courses, and it has been helpful. Yeah, no, I think we're very lucky. We're very blessed to have social media and what we have now, so we can ask each other. I get a lot of questions in my DMs on my Instagram for sure. So
100%.
I do my best to pay it forward. That's why I made my first tutorial. I'm going to do more, but you know what? I just people kept asking me, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? And I'm like, you know what? It's not a secret because there's other people doing it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I plan on doing it more. Unfortunately, I'm moving right now. I don't have a whole lot of I don't even have a desk. This is the only piece of furniture I have, guys.
Couch.
Right now.
Couch. That's okay. You make it work, man. You make it work.
So one other thing I wish I knew when I started was depth of field. Okay.
Yeah.
And simple, like for example, when you focus on a point, and this is important for if you are planning to do weddings and stuff. When you focus on a particular point, if the depth of field that you get from whatever aperture you selected is 3 feet, right? If that is going to be your depth of field, if you focus on a particular point, 1 foot is in front of that point and 2 feet is behind that point. Okay. So that pretty much just means that whatever point you focus on, you have more stuff behind it in focus. So knowing this, if you are taking a picture of, let's say, a bridal party that's standing in a semicircle, right? You don't go for the first person and you don't go for the one in the middle at the end. Otherwise, the probability of you losing someone, having someone out of focus is high. But if you go just a little bit in from the one in front, but make sure that the ones you leave behind are a lot more than the ones you leave in front, then the probability of you getting everybody in focus is much higher. Yeah. So, it sounds very simple, but not knowing this and just focusing in the middle will make you lose all the people closer.
Oh, that's an
to
awesome
use.
tip. That's an
Yeah.
awesome tip. And I learned
That's
that
an
the hard way.
experience
I
thing.
learned that the hard way, like I did a family shoot, right? And there's mom, dad, 2 kids, and they're not all, they told me they're like, we like, we like the pretty leaves, but we want to blur it out in the background. I'm like, no problems. Like, let me bump this down to like 1.8, 2.0.
Right.
And I'm shooting. I'm like, ooh, I'm getting some bangers, right? Then you go home and you put them in the computer and you're like,
No.
only this
else is
kid's in
out of
focus and mom's in
Yep.
focus, and dad is only 8 inches behind mom and he's blurry. And I'm like,
What?
oh no.
So what'd you do,
So,
man? So what'd you do?
A lot of post-processing.
Yeah.
A lot of
Sharpen that.
like wait,
Photoshop
like,
another kid in.
like for what yeah, exactly. Like for what I made, like, whoa. That was an expensive a lesson to learn.
Oh.
I mean, it's great when you shoot one person, especially if you have the eye autofocus.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But when you have like you just said, that's an awesome tip, and I hope anyone that is here that wants to shoot weddings or groups just heard that
Right.
tip,
Yep.
because, man, you save your butt. Otherwise, just go ahead and put it on like F8 or something. That way you'll know.
Exactly.
Exactly. But
funny
if
thing
you're
is-
indoors too, then you can use a fade, right? That's sometimes the problem when you have low lights in areas where you can go really down in aperture. Then you gotta figure out a way to, use your 1.8 or 2.8, but probably do what we call the hyperfocal distance, right? Focus at the hyperfocal distance, just to try to get everybody in, in focus.
Infinity. Yeah,
Focus.
that one is risky. Sometimes
Yep.
it might not be in focus at all. Yeah.
Really?
About F8. So I did school pictures. I think I told you guys at that time, right? I was a school photographer for almost a year, and sometimes I'm taking pictures of a whole class size, and it's a lot of students, right? More than 100 students sometimes, and you are taking this picture and they are going to print it. They're going to make giant prints of this picture. So if somebody is not in focus, they will know that that person is not in focus. So I was working with someone who, she just went by the book and, took the pictures in F8, whatnot. And she just thought everything would be in focus. And a lot of it was not in focus because she didn't do what I was just talking about. She focused on the first person in front, and it didn't go as far back as the last people behind because they were standing on a slope stairs. And so yes, there's that too. And of course, she couldn't go any higher than F8 because it was already a little past sunset, and the cameras we were using back then, the ISO was not good. So any higher than that would have been, bad.
It's an experience thing, eh?
Yeah.
So one thing that I also wish I knew earlier was not to get into this whole YouTube craze about gear and acquisition syndrome.
Yeah.
Sometimes
your channel about, man. What's your channel about?
I do gear reviews and stuff, right? But personally, I try to cut down a lot. Like I said, gear is good if it actually gives a little bit the value based on the value it's given me, right? So if I'm gonna spend maybe, let's say, $100 on a gear right now, that value that I'm getting from that gear being part of my kit, right, should be worth more than that $100.
Sure.
Like it should give me something in terms of time saving or cost saving, or in time of post processing. I wish I learned that earlier on, because you go on YouTube and you see every gear review, and all of a sudden it just clicks in your head. Man, I wish I have that. It may improve my stuff. So you go out and you spend the money and you buy it, and then you realize, oh, it doesn't really add anything to my value, the value of my work, right? So that's one thing I wish I had picked up earlier on, and just not get crazed into this gear acquisition stuff, and just learn the camera basics instead of just going out and looking for gear.
100%, man. 100%. If someone came to me today, like during this pandemic, and said, what should I buy? I would say whatever you have on you, but try to be as creative as you can be, because you're stuck at home. So what are you going to shoot? I really focus on that.
Eventually we get out, right?
Well, eventually,
Eventually.
in like 2022, but
You know what about weight? I don't think anyone's mentioned that too. Like
Weight.
Obviously everything's shifting towards mirrorless now. I don't know how long DSLRs will be around, but like I know you know picking up people's Canons and things like that, or even a Sony and using like the like I think it's a 70-200 f 2.8. Like I was trying to figure out if I would get a 4.0 or a 2.8 maybe for my next lens, and then I feel this 2.8. It's massive, man. It's massive, and it weighs. I think it weighs more than my two cameras, my flash, and my drone together.
Yeah.
You know, and for me it's about portability, because I like to do street photography and I like to kind of like walk around with my gear and on my back. So for me, it's about the weight too. So that's something to consider as well. You know, especially those big zooms or those big primes can weigh quite a bit. For me, I want to go back towards like minimalist photography. There's a French photographer I follow on YouTube. I can't remember his name, but yeah, he traded in his big zooms and he just carries like two primes now, like a 35 and a 50. And I'm just like, because that's all I ever shoot with anyways for the most part. Well, 85 sometimes, but yeah. So, or sometimes, you know what I'll do? I'll just challenge myself. I'll go out, be like, you know what? I'm not going to carry this heavy bag. I'm just going to take, this is my lens. This is my camera. And whatever happens, happens. And then the good thing about that too is you get to learn that lens, because there's no alternative, right?
Yes.
So
it challenges you. It's a great way to challenge yourself too.
Yeah.
And it's also fun.
Paul will tell you guys, when the first meetup I went to with Paul's group, I had the most gear on me compared to everybody there, right? I came with my backpack. I had my tripod. I had a gimbal. I have everything over there. I was that guy who wants to go out with the gear and make sure I use it, right? But after a while, I've just come to the point where maybe the last meetup I went to with Paul, I went with just an 85. I challenged myself to do street photography with an 85. Right. Everybody would say go for a 35 or something less. My challenge was to go out there that day with an 85 and see what I can get. So I had nothing on me. All I had was just that 185 and an A6400 just for video, because I just do some background videos. But for my photo shooting that day, I stuck with an 85 1.8. Went out all day and I just shot that. Whether it was good or bad, I said I was going to stick to it. And I did stick to it. I got some good shots, but I learned something out of it, right? And that's what I've been doing these days when I go out to shoot. I limit myself to one gear and say, okay, for this shoot, I'm going to try to just use this lens and that lens only. And I've also got to the point right now, like you said, the weight. I've been trying to shed weight a lot. I've got rid of most of my heavy Canon Sony lenses. And right now, the only Sony lenses I have is the 85 and the 50. The rest of my lenses, I've gotten rid of the 24-70. I just recently sold my 70-200. What I'm using in place of those right now is for the 24-70. I'm now using the Tamron 28-75, which is more than less the weight of the Sony version. Performance-wise, is almost on par, so I take that. For a replacement for the Sony,
and cost-wise, it's probably better.
And cost-wise, it's also better. It's like less than half the price of the Sony version. For the 70-200, I'm doing the same thing. I sold mine, and I'm looking at getting the Tamron version that just came out. But because of the lockdown, I don't really want to spend anything. I'm just holding off till the lockdown is over to see how things pick up. But I'm going with that because one, it's cheaper. Secondly, it's lighter and easier to carry, and it performs about the same, right? So shutting down that weight, because on a long wedding day, you have to haul this gear with you throughout the whole day. You got to try to figure out how to reduce some of the weight, because having a camera on your shoulder all day, and my cameras are light. I use the A6400, the A7 III, and the A6000. They're all light bodies, right? The A7 III is the biggest one, but it's still lighter compared to the DSLRs. But at the same time, I want to be able to reduce the footprints of the lenses, because having that small body and having a big chunky lens on it, that the lens sometimes even weighs twice the weight of the camera itself, right?
Oh yeah.
So cutting down the weight of the camera, it defeats the purpose. That's the point. So cutting down, I've realized that it's a lot more easier and manageable to carry around for longer shoots.
Weight is so important, especially after a 12-hour day, man.
Yep.
You really
Right,
feel
right,
that. You really feel it.
Yeah, well, for the weight, I will be on a slightly different side. I really don't mind the weight.
Always somebody.
I really don't mind the weight because for some, like, I've gotten used to carrying heavy stuff. So I like to shoot off camera flash most of the time with big diffusers and stuff. So I have a cart, I'm pulling, I have big bags. So the camera is not my problem. But that being said, I do have two Nikon Z6s because I started doing more video since last year, and they just fit better on the gimbal. And I mean, easier to shoot with. I can easily flip from photo to video, and I'm still getting good quality stuff. So I do have mirrorless cameras, but my favorite lenses are still huge. You know, the 135 prime, 70 to 200. And Brian was talking about the 2.8 earlier, right? So, for example, in the Nikon Z series right now, they have the 70 to 200. That was a sneeze. They have the 7200 f4 and they have the 7200 f2.8. And somehow it's like at f4, the 2.8 just looks a little sharper. It just has a little more oomph to it. For some reason, when it's not shooting at the very the lowest f-stop, the performance of the glass is just slightly better, even though the price difference might just be way too much. Every now and then, especially if you shoot events, if you're not a street photographer, you don't want to capture stuff as is, and you are shooting events and people want these pictures to hang on their walls forever. You want to be able to be delivering, good, well-lit pictures throughout. So I don't mind the weight as much. So
you might have bigger muscles than we do too, so that might be why. I'm just a little guy, man. I can't carry all that. And you have a cart too. That's cheating.
I do.
You got a cart.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we should take a break and go into the comments a little bit.
You got a question.
All right.
Yeah.
You got a question.
So Jerry said his first camera was a Canon 50D. Lava said my first camera was a Sony A200. Ooh.
Wow, I never even heard of
Anybody knows what that A200 is?
It's old. It's old.
It might be one of those A mount cameras, probably.
Wow.
Because I know Sony used to have the A mount before they moved to the E mount.
Right.
Jerry, give us more details.
And then LT says, "Close your eyes. I am having a hard time I'm having a hard enough time with my eyes wide open." Oh, I think he's referring to when we said get to know your settings with your eyes closed, right?
Oh, that. Oh, yeah. Obiba. Okay.
So there's a question. It says, what's a good starter camera that does pictures and video fairly well used on you?
I think
it's going to be an argument
last week. Right?
There's going to be. We did. Well, I was tuning in. I wasn't on, but yeah, I was.
We argued, and I think the A6400 won, right? What do you guys think?
The what? The A6400
won on my side.
A6400.
You know what? Just to make it easy, I'll also say the A6400.
Yeah, there you go.
Because I believe it. Because I believe it personally. So I don't even have to argue.
Yeah.
What's the budget? Good.
Yeah, that's
budget.
How much money to spend?
What the budget?
And I know Paul's gonna say, "What about the R5?" Right?
Oh no. So
that's
I use
that's
a
too expensive for a
Lumix
first
G7,
camera,
buddy.
I think the Alpha is going to be too expensive for a first camera.
For a first camera,
I think the thing about the A6400 is that it's about $1,000, but it's really good. There's a lot of you can get good glass and keep going up. But I had spoken about the M50, which you can now get for right around $600 or a little less than $600. and it can do both pretty well. In fact, the only time you feel it's holding you back is, let's say, if you have about 3-4 years of photography and you know, if you're just starting out, it's a great starting out camera, but you have to be ready to upgrade your body in time to be able to accommodate the EF lenses. But it's always a good second camera to have, you know. So I don't think it's still a bad investment, because if it's your first camera and you decide to upgrade 3 years from now, you know, you can still keep it as your second camera and have a second view or just backup camera and stuff like that. Yeah. So
yeah, I recommend it to somebody, the M50 just this week, right? Even though we had that argument last week. But the reason why I recommended the M50 for them was because they were looking at getting a T6i or something like that, right? Which was almost the same price as the M50. And he's basically just using it for live streaming. So what I said was, for that, I'll recommend the M50 over the T6 or the T7i DSLR. So I recommended that M50. And I have no problem with the M50. I like the M50. It's a great camera. My only problem with the M50, like I said last week, is that progression, right? So if you're someone that's going to get serious with photography down the line, the M50 doesn't give you that line of progression to go up.
Right. That's why I say you keep it as a second camera, as a backup camera. Yeah.
Backup camera.
So Obiba LT, did we answer your question?
Did we answer your question? Put us in the send a
in the comments. Let us know if you answered your question.
Also, your budget's a big factor there.
Right. So maybe you tell us what your budget is, and then we might be able to help you much better.
I got a camera in my closet. I'm gonna. I got the Canon PowerShot 5000 that I bought in like 2010. Good camera.
We got any other questions?
No, that's it in the chats for now.
That's so far.
That's it. That's in there for now.
I wish someone told me to shoot in RAW versus JPEG. Because you only after the fact.
Yeah, but did you
that's
know?
A big.
Even a couple years ago, you know, I started shooting RAW when I think my hard drive was like 250 gigs. Yeah. So I was like, oh man, I got a limited space, and you do like 2-3 uploads into Lightroom, and of course, when you first start, I don't know about you, but you don't delete anything, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna save all these. I'll rework these someday. And you're like, then you're on your third portable hard drive, and you're like, you know, maybe I should start deleting some of these photos, right? Yep. But there was a time, and I'm not opposed to doing it, but I used to have people that would send me their photos to edit, and so I charge a minimal fee, depends on what they want it done, if it involved Photoshop or whatever, you know. But I still get asked sometimes, hey, can you edit my photo? I'd love it if you edit my photo. And sometimes I'm bored, right? So yeah, send it to me, and then I'm like, what is this JPEG? Like, oh, what do you mean? I said, you got to shoot in RAW, and I'm surprised. You know, there's a lot of people don't know what that is, and so so if you're watching this and you're new, you know, if you have a halfway decent camera, even my old Galaxy phone shot in RAW, but go into your settings and change it from whatever it says fine or high quality, but you should have an option to shoot in RAW, because you're going to have so much more dynamic range, and you're going to be able to really pull colors and shadows and everything out of that photo. Because on JPEG, and this is how I describe it to people, and you guys can jump in if you want, but you know, JPEG is really for what I say is like the camera decides what the photo should look like. It says, this is our best guess, and here you go. That's your finished product. Whereas RAW gives you a little bit more flexibility. And so I don't know if you would describe it different, but that's kind of how I would, you know, put it to new people or people that don't know.
For me, I got that advice really early. So even before I started editing my photos, I had always set my camera to RAW plus JPEG. And I was shooting both of them. And I didn't really know much about Lightroom at the beginning, but I was keeping the RAW files. So sometime after I started learning to edit in Lightroom, I went back and started working on some of those RAW files. But I also still shoot RAW plus JPEG most of the time. I have two cards on the A7 III. Card 1 is always shooting RAW. Card 2 is shooting RAW JPEGs. But the reason why I have my camera set up that way is because so when I'm doing events, there are some times where I've done what we call instant print. So what I do is it's a photo booth, But this is not one of those automated photo booths. It's a photo booth where I'm taking the pictures with my DSLR, but I have somebody sitting around the next corner with a printer connected to a laptop that I take my JPEG files on that XD card and give to them from time to time. The customers will go out there and they choose whichever one they want, and it gets printed right away. Right. So the reason why I have that JPEG is that I can print them right on the spot for people who wants to. And by the way, that comes as an extra fee, right? So it's not, sometimes it's not the wedding host that's paying them.
Those JPEGs.
I'm just upselling just JPEGs, right? So the guest that comes in, if they want a nice picture taken of themselves during that wedding day and they want to print it, they go out there, they pay maybe $10 for a 5x7 print, right on the spot. So that's why I shoot RAW plus JPEG, because the JPEG gives me that ability to print right away for them to take home with them that same night. And then the RAWs are for me to edit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense. No one really tells you JPEG and RAW at the start. You just kind of find out however you find out.
Yep.
Or have you ever gone and done a shoot and you ended up in JPEG by mistake?
Yeah.
You're not quite sure how?
Yeah.
Or when I took my Mavic Pro out for like this epic mountain landscape view and it was dark, but I wasn't worried about it because I was going to pull those shadows out and I got back and I'm like, JPEG?
Yeah. Then you cry, I guess, or something. Or something
you can pull
like
it
that.
to some extent and then it becomes blown up. Yeah.
We did answer the question, by the way.
Oh, he did.
Also,
okay, yeah, he said yes.
I'm gonna say, what's your budget?
Yep.
Oh yeah, he didn't tell us what his budget was.
I'll just say that.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's a really close friend, so I know who he is.
Oh yeah.
You do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, Obiba?
Yes.
I know an Obiba in Canada. Hey,
This one is my buddy. This is my buddy, really close.
I don't know.
No, he went to National.
National. Okay, then
It's on the channel. If you click the link and you're going to go to the actual channel, you can see all the comments stream.
Oh, okay, right. I was going to say, because Jerry's a friend of mine and Jerry's a photographer in Buffalo, New York. And
is he?
And,
okay.
Speaking about guys that have gear, man, he started on Canon.
Yeah.
Now he switched to Sony, just like most smart people do.
Yeah.
And hey, Canon's got great glass though. Like, come on, like they do.
I almost did.
But
Nope.
Jerry's got like I went to Jerry's house like recently, and we were talking about Canons actually, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I got my A7 II, I got my A7 III, I got my A7 R3," and he's like, "And I just picked up this A9." I'm like, "What are you gonna do with all these cameras, man?" I was like, "Well," but he's an IT guy, like you, so like yeah, he loves the gear, the technology behind it and everything, and so it's cool, man. It's cool. This is an expensive hobby for sure, even if it
is.
Yeah.
I know you
Gotta
guys
have
do.
one.
You guys do events and things like that. Thank goodness. But like when I used to shoot weddings, I remember like I would get my down payment and I would take that down payment just to buy a new lens. Like, okay, but that's how I would justify it, right? Like I bought that lens with my down payment for the wedding. So, but now I'm always going to have this lens, right? And then what happens is by the second wedding, I don't want that lens anymore.
That's how I started building my gear collection. When I first started, I was trying as much as possible not to put in out of my pocket. So as soon as I get a job, the money that comes out of the job, I invested back into the business. If I needed a gear, I wait till I get a job. When I get a down payment, if it's enough for the gear, I go ahead and I use it for the gear.
Yeah.
That's how I bought my first couple of lenses and stuff like that. So.
But if you're not careful, you will not take profit. You always be reinvesting in gear.
You will. But at the beginning, right? For me, at the beginning, it was worth it because at the beginning, even though you're not making the money out of the money is not coming into your pocket right away. It was going towards future jobs, let's say, right? Right. Improving your gear. So because that gear that you purchase, especially if it's a lens, right? Like I always say, don't go camera body shopping as soon as a new one comes out, because the camera body will be out of style or out of what do you say? The body will be worthless in the next couple of years, right? when you invest in the lens, that lens will retain most of its value 5 years down the line. So that kind of investment, if I'm putting my the money I'm making back from the business into a lens purchase that I know is going to last me, let's say 4 or 5 years or more, right? Then it's worth it for me because it will pay itself off in the near future.
Yeah, it's a huge trap. I don't know how to put it, but yeah. For me, for example, I used to rent this Nikon 105 f1.4 lens. At the time, it cost $2,200 to buy it outright, but then it only cost $200 to rent it, with shipping and everything. So I would rent it for a wedding, and I think I rented it about 3 times, and then I was just thinking to myself, I just spent $600, which I could have saved towards buying
purchasing
this
that
thing
lens.
outright and having it forever. So yeah, after that, I decided to purchase it outright and not continue renting.
For me, renting makes sense if the item is something that you're not going to be using on a regular basis. If it is something that I need for a one-time job, or I need, maybe I'm going to use maybe once in every 2 years or something, or once in a year or something, right? But if it's a lens that I can use on repeated events, repeated weddings and stuff like that, I'd rather invest in it than rent, because if I rent it for $200 for each wedding, after 3 or 4 weddings, I probably would have purchased it if I invested it in purchasing it.
Yeah.
We have about 10 minutes.
LT said $500 for the budget.
Okay. Huh.
So there you go.
Used
Used,
M50.
yeah.
$500.
Used M50, yeah. Probably even a used A6000 you could get for around that price.
Yeah.
As well.
It looks like this, buddy, right here.
It
looks like this.
You sound up, Brian.
It's small. I hope you don't have big hands. If you have big hands, this is not going to work for you.
Yeah. So Paul and maybe this won't work for Selorm, but Paul and Brian, have you guys heard about Second 10?
No. What is that?
We'll talk offline about it. So Second 10 is basically it's a URL, it's a website it's Canadian website.
Yeah.
See how the US people gets to buy off Amazon return gears and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Second gear is Best Buy's kind of Second 10 is Best Buy's kind of return auction.
Oh wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
I am interested.
I got this A6400 that looks brand new off on Second 10 about 2 months ago for $250.
What? What? Holy sh! All right, let's end this show. I gotta get on this website.
Brian's gonna.
Oh my
God. Okay, now all our
Does it
viewers
work?
are gonna go on the website now.
Does it work?
Oh, it's perfect. I'm using it for my overhead rig right now. That's what I use for my overhead rig up here.
Wow.
Interesting.
Well, that makes me feel like I spent money on things I shouldn't have.
It just goes to show you, right?
Yeah, I check out there once in a while just to see what's new in the camera and stuff department. If I need something, or if I find something on a really good deal, then I will get it. But I try to stay away from that, because if you're not careful, you get addicted to bidding on stuff all the time.
Spending.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I want everyone to just think about this. If you are going to advise yourself of when you first started, right after you bought your first camera, what would be the advice you give to yourself? So everyone will recap that, and then we'll be done for today. How does that sound?
Cool.
All right.
You want to go first, Evans?
Who's first?
Yeah, that's fine. For me, the advice I would have given to myself is spend more time learning my camera settings right out of the gate. Because you know what I mean. When you get the camera the first time, you're so excited to go out and start taking pictures that you just leave it in auto or the P mode, wherever it comes in, and you're just snapping away. Right? I didn't really start taking good pictures until I learned to take control of the settings. You may not start off in manual right away, but learn aperture priority or learn shutter priority and start off from there, right? So once you understand some of those settings and say, okay, for this, I'm only in aperture priority and all I have to change is my aperture. You see how that aperture is affecting your camera. Once you master that, move on to shutter priority, change just your shutter, see what the kind of pictures you're getting with it. Then you move on to, let's say, trying to go into manual, controlling all three parameters, right? And see what you can do. Play out with some of the light trails or even motion, freezing motion, or even letting in motion and stuff like that. Because once you understand how your camera works and how to control the exposure parameters, that's when you are actually creating something. You're no longer taking pictures, you're actually creating something. You're creating that.
Huge. Well said.
Good point.
Well said.
Paul, let's go.
Yeah, I'll go. I would probably tell myself to just shoot as much as you possibly can, because that really ties into Evan's point about learning how to actually use the settings. Is you got to shoot as much as possible. So if that's like taking your camera to work and shooting at lunch, or trying to shoot like when you get home from work, like whatever the case is, you need to build up the habit of just shooting as much as possible, because that's going to determine how you use a camera, how you like what lens you're going to buy next, because you're going to find your style. So there's so many things tied into it that I would probably say be patient and just try to shoot as much as possible, because you think that you're just going to become a great photographer like in a week, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I'll go next so you can finish up, but I'll go against the grain. I don't want to recap what you guys just said. So
yeah,
if I could say, if there's anything I would do differently with buying my first camera over again, it would be to buy it used. I think, especially just hearing that you just bought a 6400 for $250, kind of made me throw up in my mouth a little bit. I just can't believe that, right? So that's crazy. You know, I mean, I guess a warranty is a good thing, but you know what I mean? For the price I paid for my new A6000, I could have bought 4 used cameras and I could have tried Pentax, Canon, Nikon, and Sony all at once, and then figured out what I liked, right? So, you know, but I think it's helpful, of course, to watch the YouTube tutorials and ask people. But at the end of the day, it's going to be, you know, personal preference. But I would say, if it's your first camera, do you really need a new one? I mean, they're gonna sell you that 1 year warranty, right? But most of the consumer electronics don't break down in the first 1 or 2 years anymore. They're usually going to last. So I don't know if there's really a reason to have that. So buy something refurbished. And then play, and like Paul said, you know, play around with it, take a lot of shots, and then you know, hone your craft, right?
100%.
All right, thank you,
thank you.
All right, yes. So if you just got your first camera, well, if I were to advise myself, I would concentrate on understanding the exposure triangle, and you know, understanding that to the point where I can take a better picture than the auto on the camera. Right. You know, so you have to strive for that, or take a picture that's almost as good as the auto when you just start. That's a good start. And understanding that is very vital, because that's how you take full control and take full creative control of your pictures. Because auto is just going to take an average of the scene and try to make everything average. When you want to you have a subject in mind, you focus on the subject and everything else is the background. So you have to make sure you master that. And secondly, I would say it's okay to just start off with a kit lens, but very quickly start eyeing your next lens, maybe a nifty 50. It's like $100 or $125 based on the system you use. And that $100 will make such a huge difference in your photography. But if you don't know that, you know, you might have the skills, but the equipment might be holding you back. So that's that. At the end of the day, just remember that the picture is taken by you, not the camera. So just keep learning your craft and don't focus on purchasing new gear. And do we have a topic for next week?
I don't know.
Not
Let's
yet.
think of something.
Okay.
We're gonna go through second turn next week.
All right.
Just see how we've all been ripped off the past 20 years. That'll be fun. That'll be enjoyable.
Yeah.
Are you guys shooting anything this week, like for work or for fun or for kicks?
For me, I'm just gonna finish up a few videos. I've been trying to review this lens I'm using right now. It's the Tamron 20mm f1.8 for f2.8 for Sony.
Nice.
I've had it for a couple of months now, and I haven't really reviewed it because I wanted to use it for a little bit. So I think I'm going to wrap up the review on that one for this week.
You can upload this week or next week?
Hopefully I should be able to probably upload it Friday or Saturday, and then we'll see.
Just upload. Upload everything that you can. Everyone's
Yeah, I'm trying hard to upload something, but the moving has taken all my time. I'm always packing. I'm always tired. So we'll see. I plan though to go back and change some of my thumbnails, because I changed the one and I just got like 40 views overnight without advertising it anywhere. All I did was to change the thumbnail.
But
so
you share your secrets, man.
Yeah.
Thumbnails are very important.
Thumbnails can be a whole show, man.
I know. Yeah. So I might do a lot of that this week just to spruce up the stuff. Brian, do you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, send me the link after this. I'm going to add it to the live description, because we have all 3 channels down there.
Yeah,
I'm going to add it, whoever watches.
Cool, man. Brian, you want to jump on some other time with us? Did you enjoy your time with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's easier than typing. Last time I was typing you guys the whole time.
yeah, we'd love to have you on, man.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Definitely.
It's every Wednesday, so let us know if you want to jump on. If you have a topic that you want to talk about next time.
I'll come up with some ideas. I'll come up with some
how
ideas.
you approach portrait photography.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I got all sorts of ideas.
Yeah, all right. It'll be fun. Thanks. I guess we're going to call it, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you guys for hanging on with us.
Thanks
Thank you,
for
Brian.
jumping on. Yeah.
Give the video a thumbs up, and see you next week. Next week, whose channel are we going to be on next week?
I think it's Evans.
Okay.
Brian wants to do it.
Yeah. Next week.
Brian, you want to host next week?
No, not next week. Maybe the week after.
The week after. Okay.
All right.
So I'll hold next
time. All right. Okay, I'm about to end it now.
Thanks for jumping on.
All right.
All right. Now I just ended it. You guys can see whatever you want.
All right.